It's the new Boba Fett Star Wars large-size action figure from Kenner. Darth Vader sold separately.
Capture them alive! I'm the best bounty hunter in the whole galaxy. That's why you got the job.
Boba Fett has a see-through helmet with play rangefinder to locate your objective. You can move his legs, knees, arms, even wrists and elbows. His backpack unit is removable.
You have your mission. Good luck. I don't need luck. I'm the best.
New Boba Fett Star Wars large-size action figure from Kenner. Darth Vader sold separately.
Hello everybody, and welcome once again to Geekfest Rants. My name is Carlos Perone, and today we are continuing with part 2 of our Vintage Star Wars Toys special. Specifically, we're talking about Kenner, the company that held the action figure license initially when the Star Wars films came out. We are once again visiting James, who owns this vast Kenner Star Wars collection, and with us here is also Kyle, my son. Let's explore some of these treasures that James has been acquiring for most of his life, and let's see how these toys compare to our current Star Wars counterparts these days. Let's pick up where we left off last time.
The last thing of the Star Wars era, which is probably between late 77 with the early bird set and late 79, is the large-size Han Solo in his box. Now, this one I'm especially fond of because I loved Han Solo and I thought he was really well made and he actually looked like Harrison Ford. But they made a line of large-size figures, I guess to try to stick with the G.I. Joe crowd. It wasn't as big of a seller, and, the line eventually got canceled. They had some hopes to go into the Empire era. Other than Boba Fett and IG-88, they didn't really make anything. There are prototypes out there. There are pictures of figures they were going to make. They were going to make Lando, Leia, Han, all in their Empire outfits. Some people have copied them for these figures.
Is it possible that the decision to make them at all is, number one, to compete with the people that still like the G.I. Joe size, and number two, for girls? Because you can change clothes, you can do all kinds of stuff like that.
That's certainly valid, but they could also make them more realistic. The guns,
right,
the outfits. I think at one point they thought they might sell other outfits. There are pictures of other costumes that don't even have anything to, almost like expand, what they call expanded universe now.
Yeah, like I saw these Princess Leia dolls, they came with like a bunch of different outfits. But I think those came out in like a layer.
Were those the prototypes that they were going to put her in other outfits and they never did?
Yeah, she has a blue outfit. In addition to the Bespin outfit, what they show.
Ooh. Wow, these are in good shape.
Yeah, I have almost all of them.
Wow, it's funny because they're not as bulky as I would imagine they are. They're pretty good scaled. Even the head is in pretty much
Kenner's version
good scale.
is more realistic.
Nice.
Kenner's version of figures was more realistic. G.I. Joe was trying to have a buff look because he was a warrior.
Yeah, this looks like a person. This is actually...
Big Jim was Mattel's line of G.I. Joe style, adventure guy. So Kenner had a better way of designing figures. The figures don't look too macho. The ladies don't look too, voluptuous.
Yeah.
They were more realistic. The droids look like they're supposed to. Now, they weren't that much more articulate than the little figures. But I don't know if they were more for playing or for display. It's hard to say because I basically just collected them. And they sat in a box in a closet.
Well, it's funny because the closest thing I've seen to this when they redid the large size figures is the Indiana Jones I used to have. They've done a 12-inch, I don't know if you can call it an action figure, but it's more like a doll. And I remember I would look at it and it's like the body really is not that in good scale. Usually when you have something this big, they sometimes have the problem that the head ends up being not in good proportion to the body. But this one, it's actually in good proportion. It's a pretty good proportion to the body. So they did a good job on this.
The Luke Skywalker looked like Mark Hamill. The Princess Leia looked like Carrie Fisher.
Yeah, he looks like
it's actually disappointing that they stopped. But, at that point, I can understand, their focus was the little figures.
Those are really nicely done, though, I think.
Isn't there sometimes, I don't know if there was, but aren't there sometimes problems with, like, the actor will not give you the rights to use his likeness, so when they make a figure, they have to purposely make him look different because of that?
I'm not sure if that was the issue back then, because I know these guys were all on board. They knew this is what was happening. That might happen later on. I think what happened when they re-released figures in the 90s, as the new line...
The Power of the Force and all that stuff?
Power of the Force. I think they specifically kept them ambiguous. Not exactly the likeness of the actor.
Really?
Because they might not have had new deals. The deals might have expired after a certain amount of time. But, in this case, I'm pretty sure they were all on board.
All right, what's next?
By the time Star Wars figures were winding down in the Star Wars line, they were gearing up for the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back. Now, nobody knew what was going to happen. Nobody knew if this would be, if lightning would strike twice. Was this a fluke? Would the sequel be any good? Even Lucasfilm didn't know. George Lucas put all his money, and he wasn't even sure what was going to happen. Either everything would be done, and he'd be broke, or he'd actually have, what we know today. So they started introducing, in the small line...
Now, the flap on the front of this box, were they sold as boxes like that, or were they flapped open?
These figures were sold as a rectangle cardboard box that hold the figure with a flap sticking out with the picture of the figure. They could either stock them on the shelves so they interlocked with each other, or it was just something different than a square box. Now, modern times, they've tried to recreate that, and they've also tried to sell them just in a square box. This one that I have here, the flap is folded over and taped to protect it. So, by 1979, Star Wars toys have been out. They're huge. Everything is, going full steam. But they're gearing up now internally for The Empire Strikes Back. Now, we don't know that because we don't know what's going on, except there's something called the Star Wars Holiday Special. And everything about it is bad, except it's the first time we see Boba Fett. Have you ever seen it, Kyle?
Yes, I have.
And it's bad.
Yeah.
But even the cartoon with Boba Fett is bad in hindsight, but we get to meet Boba Fett for the first time, and they say he's a major character in the Star Wars.
Even though he looked completely different than from the movie. He has like this staff and stuff.
Yeah, in the cartoon, I think he's holding this weird...
It's almost more like a Macquarie prototype than what we eventually get. And then by the time we get him, originally he was supposed to be white, and then he took the gray kind of color that we know, even though he looked a little different in the movie.
Nowadays, when they're ready to introduce a character, you get the final version of the character. You don't get these different prototype-ish versions, which is what we got to peek a little bit at a time back then.
So originally Boba Fett came out, but he was supposed to have a launching backpack. Except around that same time, a little show called Battlestar Galactica came out and had toys that launched a little missile. Well, whether it be urban legend or fact, kids were getting hurt by the launching missile.
Well, there were two problems. The launching of the missile could potentially hit somebody in the eye or something, so that could happen. The other problem was small items, kid could choke on them.
Yes. And allegedly, when the Battlestar Galactica toys came out in 79, a kid choked. I remember hearing stories like that, whether it was fact or not, who knows? Like I said, it could be urban legend, it could be fact. So Kenner quickly said, we're going to nix that, and they released him with a glued-in launcher.
Now,
it
this
really didn't
is
make that big a deal. In fact, it made it better in some cases.
Now, this is the 3 3/4 we're talking about.
That's right. Well, at the same time, under the Star Wars packaging, they released Boba Fett as a large-size figure. Now, to me, this was one of the best toys they've ever made. It is really cool looking, and it's, as you know, like I said, the size of the large-size figures.
Lots of accessories attached to him.
They made his neck a little too long, but it's still cool.
You got to remember,
this is still probably going over prototypes,
right?
Not the actual finished product.
Right. This is still like some things look very finalized. Like the helmet looks pretty definite, but a lot of the items on the body are a little exaggerated because it's still kind of prototypish a little bit.
And they sold him with accessories on him that what they were supposed to do, not that they actually did anything. On his one wrist, he's supposed to have a flamethrower. He never used a flamethrower. Maybe he had one, maybe he didn't. On his other shoulder, he has what they call Wookiee scalps. And is basically, he's supposed to be such a bad boy that he, has even captured Wookiees and scalped them. And he comes with a gun, which is not the same gun that he has. I don't think so. I don't remember in the movie. I think he had more of a short rifle. I think that's like a derivative of the gun.
Yeah, the movie has like a longer muzzle, I believe. This is a little different. It's kind of there, but it's not.
But it's another version also, again, that's the large version. The small version, the large version, and the real version.
And also the top of him looks like he's got like a little...
Well, this is
now his rocket launcher does come out, and there's a string, as you can see on the bottom, that if you were to stretch it out, it would make it like a grappling hook or something. Now, and then you could pull the string and he would go up. It's more like an interactive play.
Oh. But is this a firing rocket or a removable rocket?
Well, it's a removable on that string. If you see the string underneath, like I said, you could hook him. They made it as if you could hook him on top of a bookshelf, and then you could hold the string on the bottom and slide him up like he was launching. It didn't really do any launching of himself. And he comes with his cape, which the figure wasn't really seen with his cape in the movies, but again, one of the prototypes showed him with a cape. So my guess is if you took the backpack off, he would have this cape or a cloak. So they tried to give us a little bit of everything.
I think because part of the original design was to make him look a little bit like the gunslinger, like the Clint Eastwood man with no name, with the poncho, and he's
nobody
hiding.
expected him to be what he is today.
Right.
Everybody's favorite bad guy.
Now, what's the deal with the viewing thing behind his head and you could see through his eye?
My guess is back then, at the same time, Steve Austin was a big character, and he had a bionic eye.
And the $6 million man, Kyle.
The toy of the $6 million man, Steve Austin, had a feature that if you look through it, it was a bit of almost like it was telescopic. It would almost be like looking through a binocular, but not really. And so maybe they gave it another element to tie in with the $6 million man, because that was a Kenner product. The $6 million man was also a Kenner product. So maybe they said, hey, let's throw that in too.
And compared to like the Han Solo, for example, they try to give you more here. You can see that they try to give you as many little accessories and features as possible that you can't do with a regular human character.
You can see the direction they were thinking they were going to go. And by the pictures of prototypes I've seen of the large-size Han Solo with the Hoth outfit and the large-size Luke with the Bespin outfit, they were going with more elaborate costumes.
Right. Cool.
The next thing I have, which is the equivalent of the Death Star from the Star Wars line, is Darth Vader's Star Destroyer. Now, it didn't have a name at the time. Maybe it did, but they didn't really concentrate on that kind of stuff. And this was a play set, a little less involved than the Death Star, but tries to recreate the bounty hunter scene, the meditation chamber scene. There's a hanging hologram that is basically just a red piece of plastic that looks like it has shimmering on it.
Yeah.
And this thing had some light, so when you put the batteries in, it gave off like a bit of a glow, but it wasn't very sophisticated.
Now, is that an upside-down character there? Like Vader is holding somebody upside down?
I think that's the best they can give you for like the torture. When they would choke people, they really can't show you him choking anybody, so they made it look like he had somebody upside down as if he was tortured. Now, I don't recall that being in any scripts, but
now,
maybe that's the equivalent.
The other thing I noticed that it has a gun, and I imagine the gun might be kind of like when the Star Destroyer is shooting some of the asteroids out of the way, so maybe that's...
I think somebody probably said, what's so much fun about playing with a piece of plastic?
How can you have a playset without a gun?
It doesn't even have a gun. So you figure there are scenes where the Star Destroyer is shooting either at the Millennium Falcon or at asteroids, and there's the gun that's doing the shooting.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't this whole playset also mountable on your hand or something?
Yes, there's a little handle underneath. There's 3 legs, and the front leg you would hold, and you could fly it around. But why you'd want to fly around this piece of plastic?
Well, again,
it's hard to imagine.
It's you can't sell a playset. It has to be a ship. Okay, you want a ship? Here's a handle.
Now, I even read at some point, and I haven't found modern proof of this, but anecdotal, that the Millennium Falcon toy from the 70s was supposed to somehow mount on the back. If you see the blue right there, the blue back, the legs of the Millennium Falcon, the bottom 2 legs are supposed to click into that, just like in the movie. Now, I imagine if you clicked into that and you tried to do anything, all these pieces of plastic are falling apart.
Yeah, and the toy will just topple over because of the weight.
The Millennium Falcon wasn't that strong to begin with. Whoa. The hatches would fall off and things would fall off. This thing is of lesser quality than the Death Star.
Wow. Push button to open the door and help Princess Leia through the secret escape hatch. Nope, she was not in the Star Destroyer.
Yeah, there's a little hatch, and I can't imagine what you would do with it. I remember getting it basically because it was part of the set, but it's pretty disappointing.
Darth talks to the Grand Visor with the pretend viewing screen. The Grand Visor?
I think by visor, if you look at his meditation chamber, there's a red visor. It's a red screen, and like I said, there's this hologram. It's supposed to be this hologram of this red piece of plastic that comes down, and I think when the light were to hit it, and it was supposed to give the impression like it's like the Emperor. Yeah. It's not as modern. Like now they would just mold an Emperor in clear plastic.
No, I'm just trying to see if, for example, at the time they didn't want to use the name Emperor.
Oh, well,
maybe that was a surprise. So the Grand.
Yeah, well, that's certainly possible. But this toy came out after the movie had come out. This toy probably came out about Christmas of '80. And most people bought it early '81.
Wow, that's cool.
Remember I told you how Bradley's had a early bird special? This is just for you. I saved the Empire Strikes Back toy sale.
Wow, these are great prices. Look, Death Star Space Station, $17.29. October 13th, 1980.
That would be around the fall, Christmas season, starting to sell stuff.
It's the fall after Empire.
Yeah, isn't that pretty neat?
I love these prices. Star Wars action figures, $1.87, regularly $2.49. So they're already in the mid-twos.
1980 was a tough year in the economy.
Jesus. Darth Vader collector case, $7, regularly $9.99.
I probably paid full price.
Falcon, $22, normally $29.
I got that as a gift. Yeah, it was about $30, the one I got. I got as a gift for my birthday in 79. The final thing I have for The Empire Strikes Back is the Rebel transport. And in addition to it being a spaceship, it was also a figure holder. And if you look inside, you can see how they line up all the figures as if they're going on, I think they're going on Noah's Ark, if you want to look at the box. This was a big deal at the time. And you know what? It wasn't a big seller. I don't know a lot of people that had it. It's a big egg.
Well,
it's more visual than it is playable.
It's an unusual toy because, first of all, it looks like they tried to combine, again, they don't want to go for the play set by itself. They have to make it a ship. So in this case, you have the shape of the ship, obviously completely out of scale. But instead of combining it with a play set, they're combining it with a carrying case, really. So it's really a gigantic, fancy carrying case, as opposed to the
expensive carrying
the Darth
case.
Vader head or the later C-3PO head ones. Now,
I recall this being maybe also in the $20s, between $19.99 and maybe like $30 at the time.
Now, here's what's
prices started going up by the time Empire came
Here's
out.
one thing that's unusual about this ship. First of all, in the film itself, you see it very briefly, and the biggest problem I had when watching this ship on Empire is that I never really get the scale of how big it is. You see it out in the snow far away, and I never really understood.
And then you see it flying out past the Star Destroyer.
And you never see it, like, is it as big as a Star Destroyer, or is it like a fighter? But what's amazing about the ship that you never really see is the fact that the bottom of the ship comprises of basically cargo holds.
It's a cargo holder, whereas our present-day cargo holders, everything piles on the top of the
This
hull.
goes on the bottom.
Everything was hooked on somehow either magnetically in the real design of it underneath. So that's why it had a weird shape underneath, but a smooth shape on top.
Right, and you never really got that scale. You never saw
toy
the scale.
doesn't give you that impression
Right, the toy doesn't
either.
give you. Now, what's funny about the toy is that it also shows you pictures of the Rebel backpacks, which you could not normally just go and buy. These
No, that
were
was
the ones
a mail away.
you would order those.
Yes, that was a mail away. It was called the Survival Kit.
Right, you get the masks from the asteroid
got the mask
thing.
from the Minoc hunt.
Yeah.
You got the backpack that Luke wore when he was transporting Yoda that you could actually fit Yoda in, and you got the backpacks for the Hoth troopers.
Here's a good one for you, James. The captives get away through the secret escape hatch to tell Darth Vader about the Rebels' new base. Oh, is that scene going to be on the Blu-rays? I don't remember that scene.
Well, I wouldn't even know that because I didn't even open that toy, and everything's still in plastic.
Wow. I'm reading from the box here. Entire cannon assembly is removable to protect your secret land base. It's they try to make it a place set. They try to make it a carrying kit. They try to make it everything, basically. And obviously,
it's hard to get people to buy a $20, $30 piece of plastic
They should
if it doesn't
remake
do
this.
anything.
wait a minute. Hold on. Here's what happens when you don't open your toys, Mr. James. Includes 5 Hoth backpacks
Yeah, there might be in there.
and 4 asteroid gas masks.
Well, maybe they're in there.
They're in here. This is the things we were always under the impression that you could not buy. They're in this damn box.
Well, that came out later. The survival kit that came out later than the survival kit.
I was never aware that you could actually purchase them as part of something else.
Well, now you know.
So that's why they have them. Now, I don't see pictures. Oh, no. They're the picture. They're right on the picture here. Right on the box. They show them.
Look at the gun look at the side picture that I'm looking at. There's a gun. Wow, a playset gun.
I wonder if they recycle these guns for other... Oh, no, they're the gas masks right there. The guy's holding all the gas masks. Damn it. And I felt so special when I ordered those, and I'm like, I'm the only boy in the world.
Well, you were the only boy at the time. Then they came out with this thing, and you were just another guy on the block.
Now I'm not special. Here, take this piece of junk back. Destroying my childhood with your toys.
You're just jealous.
All right, what do you got next, James?
All right, so by the time Empire Strikes Back wrapped up, there was no stopping the Star Wars toys. And they were ready to go for the Return of the Jedi, which at one point was Revenge of the Jedi. And there were packages made, prototypes, but they didn't get released.
Oh, that's interesting.
There were promotions suggesting that you could get a 9-num or things of that nature with a Revenge promo. But no packages were released. We've seen pictures as the years gone on that they did make figure packages with Revenge. And in fact, just recently, as a Comic-Con exclusive, they made Revenge of the Jedi reproduction packages, but they never really were released. So they made a ton of figures. They made various play sets. And one of the cool play sets that they made, one of the cool ships that they made, was a B-Wing fighter. They actually finally started making other ships that figures could fit in. And here I have the B-Wing fighter, which came out probably around 1984. And it would hold the B-Wing pilot, which was coincidentally also released at that time.
Is the B-Wing pilot one of the last?
It's probably in the middle.
It's not one of the medallion coin last.
I don't think so. I think the B-Wing pilot was a regular release in the Return of the Jedi line. He may have been released with a medallion as well.
Now, was this exclusive to anything or no?
No, this was a regular. This was probably purchased at Toys R Us or KB Toys, and it's pretty well made. It has a little bit more detail than the original ships, and it's more movie accurate. The cockpit spins, the wings open and close.
You get to see the landing gear. That's interesting.
Yeah, the landing gear is a little vague.
I mean, you never saw it in the movie, obviously. This is an interesting concept ship to begin with, because from what I understand, in a way, in a bizarre way, this is what the Millennium Falcon, not the shape, but the function of it was supposed to be. You're supposed to have a cockpit
that
the whole
around.
Ship would spin around the cockpit and move around as needed. And initially they decided it was too difficult to manufacture that for the film. But I guess by the time they got to Jedi, they're like, hey, let's go back to our original idea.
Yeah, and obviously they did that with the prequels. They pulled out some old designs.
Oh, yeah. And they had the technology. Once they're dealing in CGI, they can do whatever the hell they want. But back in 76/77, mechanically, I guess it was too difficult to have an entire ship that would just rotate around the axis of a cockpit. But yeah, this was, to me, by the time these ships came out, it was the end of the line. And
this was probably about the middle of the line.
It was just difficult to find a lot of things. It was getting harder and harder to find things.
The bloom was off the rose, and people who were kids in 77 were now becoming teenagers, and new kids weren't buying as much. They were buying more He-Man, and G.I. Joe had been re-released in 82 and as 3 3/4-inch figures. So that was a new thing. And so the kids really weren't buying Star Wars as much. And that's why some of this stuff at this point is a little bit rarer.
Yeah. It's a shame because it's a very, as far as the design, it's good. It's well made, and technologically, these toys are getting more elaborate every year. As we talked about earlier, you start off with a Death Star that has no electronics, and then little by little, more electronics, wings flapping, they move and they do what they're supposed to do. And
which brings us to the next toy. And this was the big daddy of the Return of the Jedi line.
Yeah.
And this was the Imperial Shuttle Tidarium. And as you can see, the picture is, way too many Emperor's Guards.
Yeah, this might have been the biggest of the Return of the Jedi toys.
And this toy was $39.93, almost $40 in 1984. And I think this may have been re-released in similar fashion during the prequel era.
Yes.
And it was an FAO Schwartz exclusive,
and even
it was
recently,
very expensive.
And even recently, they I don't know how many re's we can add to it, but it has been redone once again. And, you're dealing with a ship. It's not so much a playset, but it's big enough to be used as a playset if you wanted to.
The wings flap up and down. It has landing gear.
Right.
It has cockpit. It
yeah,
has
like you
room
said,
for
the
figures
scale
inside.
is not perfect because...
And it has laser sounds.
Right, and it's smaller, and like we said before, the technology got better, more features than ever before, and kind of like if Empire had the AT-AT as the biggest ship they had, Jedi had the Imperial Shuttle. And I even remember, I think even the commercials, there were less commercials. You felt that it was winding down. Everything was slowing down a little bit.
So by Christmas of 1984 and into 1985, the line was dying. There was very few people buying, and they had some spin-offs, almost EU-type stuff, what they call now. And they had a cartoon series called Droids and Ewoks. Now, they made figures for both of them, but the Droids line reproduced some figures from the actual Star Wars line, but with droid design on it, droid painting. So R2 and 3PO had a more comic-looking paint job, but they sold the A-Wing pilot and Boba Fett in their regular paint job. They didn't try to comic art them. But the packaging changed. So some of this Droids packaging are Return of the Jedi ships in Droids packaging, and it's very rare. And this is the A-Wing, which not a lot of people have. Around the same time, they also released the Power of the Force, which was a designation so they could re-release stuff from Star Wars and Empire without making it seem like it was dated. So they just called it Star Wars: The Power of the Force. And they released new figures as well as re-releasing some old figures, and they gave you a coin, a collector's coin, which is a very rare thing because to get a complete set of coins was very difficult. And to get all of the droids or Ewoks figures was even harder because some of them were only released in South America or Europe or wherever.
The A-Wing toy was weird because, like you said, they did repackage it, and all of a sudden it doesn't look like...
It's definitely Return of the Jedi ship.
Yeah. And like you said before, they're not trying to cartoon it up.
Yeah, and even shows the Emperor and Return of the Jedi figures.
Yeah, these are legitimate figures. Now, what's unusual about the packaging is the fact that they used art, drawing, for the face.
Rather
but
than the actual
if you want to
ship.
see the actual pictures, you got to go in the back, which is kind of different than how they used to package the other
They're
ones.
trying to fresh it up and keep it cartoonified, even though it's a real ship.
Now, this is a cool design for a ship, and I'm not exactly sure, but I don't think they redid it until a very long time later. As a matter of fact, recently.
Yeah, I think in the past couple
it was
years.
cool, I guess, that they at least were continuing, since they couldn't sell the toys under the Star Wars line, they at least put it under the Droids banner and continued a little bit. Obviously, it didn't succeed, but it was nice that they were able to pull off a final... It's hard to believe that even 3 years after Jedi comes out, they still have main ships that have not been released yet that they can actually put out.
And then in the Power of the Force line, which was the final nail in the coffin, they put out Jabba's skiff, plus some lesser vehicles and some mini rigs that they tried to make a couple bucks off of. And the Jabba skiff is probably one of the rarest toys.
Yeah, even
because
harder
it's
to find.
in a Power of the Force packaging, which is more black and light with the lightsaber logo.
Yeah.
And those figures are also some of the rarest ones, with Yak Face being among the hardest to find because he was very, very limited in North America, and most people have him in tri-logo packages.
And they had a similar situation, from what I understand, with the Droids figures, where there was one particular figure that is considered to be the holy grail of all the action
Yeah, and he was
figures.
only available through a gas station in South America.
Yeah,
or
like in Brazil, you can pick them up. They never actually released them up here, and people are still, to this day, searching eBay and private collectors looking for this. I think it's called Vlix, something like that.
Vlix,
This
I think
this
it was
blue
called.
character.
And it was just some not inconsequential character,
Yeah,
but
for collectors, it's important. But anyway, a lot of these last-minute ones we just talked about are ones that hopefully we can cover in some future episodes. Well, that about wraps things up for today. I'd like to thank James for letting us examine his collection once again, and Kyle for participating in our discussion. And we will come back soon to continue exploring this vast vault of Kenner Star Wars toys that never cease to amaze me, and hopefully some of you. On behalf of everybody here at Geekfest Rants, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you here next time on Geekfest Rants. Bye-bye.
Han Solo!
The galaxy explodes. The rebels return. You can relive it all with Kenner's Star Wars Return of the Jedi collection.
Rebel attack squad ahead.
New Imperial shuttle. You have to put it together. Batteries not included. Action figures each sold separately.
After him. Excellent, Lord Vader. Death Star signaling. Wing up. Prepare to land. Landing gear down. Ramp engage. His battle station better be ready or... Yes, my Emperor.
New Imperial shuttle. Action figures sold separately. From Kenner's Star Wars Return of the Jedi collection.
Stop.